Welcome back. I'm Ron from the Google Databases product team. Today, I'm very excited to host Kristian Cibulskis, Director of Technology from the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard. He has some interesting Cloud SQL stories that he's going to tell Andi Gutmans, our VP and General Manager for Databases. So, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about the Broad?
Yeah, hi, Ron. So the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard is a nonprofit biomedical research organization that was founded in 2003. And our mission is to fulfill the promise of genomics through the creation of tools, making them broadly available, applying them to the understanding of biology to cure human disease. And since our leading role in the sequencing of the first human genome, the creation and analysis of human genetic data has been one of our key growth areas. And within the Broad Institute is the data sciences platform. And our mission is to create and operate cloud-based tools for our researchers to help them in their goals. As for me, I've been at the Broad for 15 years, and in that time, I've spent time as an IC engineer in our cancer research group doing genetic analysis, as well as leading our engineering teams as part of the data sciences platform. But now I'm part of our special projects team, and our mission is to look at emerging technologies to see how they could create differentiating products for our users.
Kristian, thanks so much for joining us today. Can you tell us about some of your industry challenges and why you ended up choosing Google?
So the life sciences are being increasingly driven by the generation and analysis of these massive data sets, and being able to organize and analyze that data is critical. We make use of products like BigQuery and Dataproc in the course of that analysis. But at the same time, the industry is also changing extremely rapidly. And from a software development perspective, being able to keep pace with those changes and act nimbly to deliver software to our users is critical. The more we can speed the pace of development, the better we can serve those researchers. And as for why GCP, the Broad and Google have had a long history together. And so as we started to look to where to start, GCP was a natural starting point. Of course, we're interested in extending this to all the clouds because that's where biomedical data ultimately resides.
And which of our managed databases do you use? And what are your key use cases?
One of the main products of the data sciences platform is Terra.bio, which is a secure, scalable, open source platform for biomedical research. And it was co-developed by the Broad, Microsoft, and Verily. It's used by researchers both at the Broad and around the world to help them access public data sets and methods, manage their own data, organize their research, and collaborate with others. And in the control plane for Terra, we use a little bit of everything. We use Datastore and Firestore, and we use quite a lot of Cloud SQL, both Postgres and MySQL. When we started out, we knew we wanted a managed database service, and MySQL was the initial offering. And so we started building our services using that. As Postgres became available, our newer services were built using Postgres, and we're slowly migrating our older services over time. The kinds of things we track in this control plane are the different data assets and methods, research results, as well as access control. So things that maybe are not totally unique to the life sciences industry, but extremely critical for our users. Another interesting use case we have is when the global pandemic hit, the genomics platform at the Broad, who's one of the largest genomic sequencing providers in the world, quickly pivoted to become a COVID testing provider. There were times during last year where we were executing 10 to 15% of all the COVID tests in the United States. And like a lot of people at the Broad, the data sciences platform jumped in to help with that effort. And we helped build this solution rather quickly using a lot of serverless and a Postgres Cloud SQL database at the core.
That's awesome that you were able to react so fast to the pandemic. Where do you see the value in using managed databases like Cloud SQL?
I think for us, it largely comes back to that speed of delivering solutions for our users. And it comes in two different flavors. One is a lower barrier to entry. So our developers can get using these managed database services rather quickly without needing to go through some centralized resource that might become a bottleneck. And the second is through lower operational burden. So by relying on these managed services, we can spend less resource keeping them up and running and performing at their best, and instead use those resources to develop new features for our users. So going back to the global pandemic example with our COVID testing pipeline, we had about 2 or 3 weeks to come up with a solution with a very small number of people on the team. I think it really was 2 weeks from the very first idea that the Broad maybe should get into large-scale COVID testing till our first day of production operations. And on that first day, we delivered 140 COVID tests. And almost a year to the day later, we were delivering 140,000 COVID tests a day. Our Cloud SQL Postgres database at the core of that has been performing really well. With a few CLI commands, we were able to enable high availability and read replicas. Backups and maintenance upgrades were transparently performed for us. And just given the tight timelines we had and the small team, I'm not sure we could have confidently enabled all those features successfully.
Wow, that's an over 1,000 times increase in COVID testing per day. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a huge scale up, both from a software perspective, as well as obviously the lab that's working to actually handle the physical samples. It's quite an amazing thing to watch.
Can you give us an example of how you're leveraging our analytics products together with the databases?
So as I mentioned earlier, we definitely use the analytic products like BigQuery and DataProc in the analysis of genomic data, but a lot of the source of that data comes from large files and object storage. I think a really interesting use case where we see these two working well together is analyzing cost data. So in our Google projects, we enable billing exports that put our billing data into BigQuery data sets, and we make heavy use of labels to label those resources. But those labels really aren't enough information to help our scientists understand their cloud spend. So we join that back off to our relational databases, so we can then tell a researcher that this VM they spent 17 cents on was actually used as part of this analysis, as part of this research project on this particular sample. And they can use that both to control their costs, but also decide where to focus their optimizations.
That's pretty great. What is one thing you think other customers should know about our managed databases?
Mostly it's that they just work. You really do just click a button and you get a highly reliable relational database that you can use in production. We operate in a regulated environment, and we've got clinical regulations as well as FedRAMP for federal data. And being able to leverage GCP's compliance story for those products has also been really helpful. I think the other thing I would add, though, is that just because you've got these really powerful tools doesn't mean that no one in your organization should understand how databases work. You still have to think about things like data lifecycle, data sunset policies, schema modeling, and so forth. And we're learning how to strike the right balance between enabling a lot of developers, yet still giving them the technical knowledge they need to deliver high-quality solutions.
And if you could ask one thing from us, the Google team, what would that be?
I think if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said better insight to the performance and reliability of the database. Some of our services were degrading in terms of performance, and it was really tricky to get a handle on what the source of those performance problems were. With Cloud SQL Insights, I think that's a great new tool that fills a gap, and we're really excited to spend some time learning more about that tool. So I think if I could ask for something else, then it would be looking at the maintenance and associated uptime. This has been a great story, I think, so far, with the addition of things like shorter uptimes, shorter downtimes, alerts for maintenance windows, and the ability to reschedule those maintenance windows. But for things like the COVID testing platform, where we really are a 24/7 operation, those sort of downtimes at all have a real impact for us. So having something like zero-time upgrades the way that the serverless products have would be really powerful.
That is great feedback, and we are definitely working on it. Kristian, I want to thank you again for sharing with us, how you're transforming medicine by using GCP databases. Thanks a lot.
Great, thanks, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kristian. Thank you for sharing your story. And Andy, thank you, as usual, for hosting. On behalf of everyone here in Google Cloud Databases, thank you for watching, and see you next time.